Hey, welcome back to another episode of Regenerative Inspiration. Today I'm here with Michael Brody-Waite, and he is with Addictive Leadership. And when I heard Michael's story, I was in Nashville. I was interviewing some titans of industry for the Nashville, Tennessee market. And I'm like, Michael, will you come on my podcast, please? And we're just this fledgling little thing. And he was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. And I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, we don't have a huge following yet, but like it's hopefully growing, and really it's about impacting individuals. And I know that your heart is in the same place, and you've got an incredible story that I know you're going to share. But tell me a little bit about like what you're doing right now. And then I want to dig in a little bit more to like where you were and how you got out of that. Like, cause that
Yeah,
to me is so powerful.
sure. These days, I am a speaker. I also own a company called Addictive Leadership. It's a leadership development company where I took all the principles I learned in 12-step recovery and translated it into a process to help leaders reclaim time, be more effective. That it's like literally leadership training, like you would expect, except completely not what you would expect because it's a drug addict teaching it to you. Like that's just like not what people expect. But we've had the opportunity to take our program to over 30,000 leaders. Um, and these days, I'm not as active in the business, and I'm just kind of speaking and going where my heart leads me, where my higher power does. I've got a 5 and 7 year old, and a wife that I actually love and want to be with. And I'm also in 12-step recovery and try to focus on that program. So right now some of my friends say semi-retired, but I'm still looking for interesting opportunities to do things. And I still work with my company when they need me.
I love it. Well, tell me a little bit about the story. Like, how did you get, because you were at the lowest of lows. Like, how did you get there? Like, what spurred that on? How did you get there?
Yeah, I would have thought that I would be asked by anyone to share my story and be able to say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing right now," because I'm 47 years old, and I thought for sure I'd be dead by the age of 25. So this is all a trip. So for me, I'm from California, where they say "dude," and now I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where they say "y'all." And my journey is geographic, and that's a symbolism for what I went through. But basically, man, I was hopelessly addicted to alcohol and drugs. Every day was the same. I'd wake up, I'd steal money from my friends because I was homeless. I'd go score drugs, I'd get high, I'd stay high, I'd do terrible things that I would regret if I could remember them, and then I'd wake up the next day and I'd do it again. And I'd do
Jeez.
it again and do it again and do it again. And, by the time I was 23, I had been kicked out of college. I had been fired from my job. I'd been evicted from my home. My car had been repossessed. The only money I had was what I could steal because I was homeless, obviously, and I was throwing up blood. And, you know, I had a lot of friends in high school that, they went to college and, or they got really good at sports or they found their thing. And they were productive members of society, and my thing was getting high. It's not because I really wanted to get high. I just didn't know how to live life without it. It's like I felt like I was born without the instructions. And so where I started was, you know, a fifth of vodka, an 18 pack of beer, uh, an eighth of weed, as much painkillers or mushrooms that I can get my hands on, and 2 packs a day of cigarettes, and putting that in my body every single day and not caring who I hurt and what I did. And uh, that's where I started. I feel like we should just end there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where you started. Well, that's where you could have ended. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
That's 100%. Like most people couldn't take that for more than a week, and you did that for quite some time. So what
Yeah.
spurred you to get out of it? Because addiction, I mean, we all know somebody that's addicted to something, maybe
Yep.
different levels, right? But in addiction in general, there's a reason to fill some form of void or need, or get to that place where you don't know how to get there. There isn't that instruction manual, like you said. So how did you break that cycle? What was the moment? What was the period of time? What happened?
Well, I mean, so like, first of all, I just want to say, like, I am so freaking lucky. Like most people caught in that cycle don't make it. The stats, it's something like 5 to 10% of people that want to get to 1 year clean or sober do, but only 1% get to 10. And I'm sitting here with, 2 decades plus. So it's just, it, what I'm going to describe and what happened for me, like not a day goes by that I'm not reminded and so appreciative of the fact that it's a miracle that I survived. And for me, my story's not that different, both in the pain and in the solution, man. I had reached the bitter ends, and they say the first thing, everybody thinks the first thing an addict needs to stop using is like hope or desire, or they have to admit that they have a problem. Like, no, man, the number one thing we need is pain. Like literally, when the pain becomes too great, will we stop and be willing to look at a different solution? So I needed pain. And, the way that I opened talking about where I was, like that was so painful. I mean, I was trying to kill myself a lot of different ways. I was really scared to do it like the direct way. And so the way that I was living, I mean, I would find the biggest guy in the street and try to pick a fight with him, hoping he killed me. I mean, these aren't things that you're supposed to do. So my life was miserable inside and out. And my parents, my dad, he would meet me for breakfast every month, and it was a transaction. It was I would get a free meal, which a lot of days for me, I was choosing between, am I going to be able to eat today or just get drunk and high today or whatever. And he would be able to verify that his son was still alive, and so I would go have breakfast with my dad, and every time he would see me, he'd tell me, he's like, "Hey, there's a treatment center, 3 hours from here that we would love to send you to if you want to." I'd be like, "Dad, no, I'm good. I'm good." I don't know why I thought I was good, but I was unwilling to let anyone help me. I know there are leaders listening, and like that's like one of the first key insights, right? Like when we aren't willing to own our challenges, we aren't able to lead ourselves. And so I wouldn't let him help me. And then, I wasn't actually living on the street. I was living on a guy's floor. And then I would steal from him and trash his place and stuff. And I came back from one of these breakfasts, and he's like, "Yeah, you should take him up on it." And I could tell that was his way of saying that my next stop was, the street. And so I went to rehab, not because I wanted to get clean or sober, but because I needed a place to get shelter and 3 meals a day. So I said yes. And I fully intended to figure out what my game plan was when I was there and go straight back to what I was doing. But there is a saying, come for the wrong reasons and stay for the right ones. And I was really fortunate that was true in my case. So that was the first step in me being able to have a completely different life, was admitting that I had a problem. Once the pain had become too great, and being willing to take an action even though my motive wasn't the best. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So from there, I know that you had some significant changes that happened, right? Was this the first time and it stuck? Or did you?
Yeah, I am so freaking lucky. I remember when towards the end of rehab, we're all in a circle, and the guy's like, look to the guy to your left, look to the guy to your right, and just know that there's only one person probably in this group that's going to make it. And they're not doing that to scare us. It's just to help us understand how important it is to execute what they taught us. And, the first couple of days I was in there, I was actually my first day, I got paired up with a buddy, and he was supposed to show me everywhere. And then like halfway through, he like escaped. And so like, I took that, like, I thought that was a sign that I'm not supposed to be in rehab. And then, some other guy sits me down. He goes, "Hey, what are you in for?" Like, we're, in prison. And it's like, it's not that serious, man. It's Betty Ford in Palm Springs. Like, you technically can AMA yourself if you want. He's like, "What are you in for?" And I'm like, "Well, alcohol, weed, painkillers, mushrooms." He's like, "No IV drugs?" I was like, "No, not yet." He's like, "Can I swear on this podcast?
Sure.
Or do you want me not?"
You can.
Uh, I try to respect the house I'm in.
You're all good.
But he looks at me and he says, "No IV drugs." I was like, "No." He's like, "Get the fuck out of here and come back when you have a real addiction." This guy had like 4 days clean, by the way. I mean, like, it's not like he was the counselor, but I was sitting there. I was like, dude, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. But I mean, in all seriousness, though, that helped. That voice inside of me that said, I'm different. I don't belong here. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing. Like, I'm not as bad as these people. I haven't had that low of a bottom. And, you know, it's crazy when you find yourself completely homeless, throwing up blood, everybody alienating everybody in your life, and you're finding other people to say, dude, I'm not that bad. They're worse. Like, I mean, that's a problem. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Usually the vomiting blood is the part that gets most people.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like, there's just like no self-leadership, which is why I'm so obsessed with leadership, because there's just no self-leadership there. And so, so I half like believe this guy who's now like, my counselor that I've chosen, who probably like also left. And I have no idea if that guy made it, but one problem for me in my effort to convince myself I didn't belong was, I kept hearing my story come out of other people's mouths when they talked about the inside. See, there were fathers, and I was a young kid, and I was 23 years old, and there were people that had much worse things, or people that used different things that I did, all that kind of stuff. But I kept hearing the same internal powerlessness, the pain and the suffering, and just basically like numbing yourself until you die and waiting for that. And so, somewhere along the line, man, I'd come for the wrong reasons and I stayed for the right ones, and something opened up in me, and I remember I saw the emotion. I saw the 12 steps on the wall, and my initial thought was, "There's no way those can work for me," because I saw a mention of a higher power in the second step, and I was an atheist, and something happened as I worked the steps and I talked to the counselors, and something opened up inside of me. And I remember I had this moment with a therapist where he said, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay. Can you at least acknowledge that there might be something bigger than you?" I'm like, I'm not an idiot. I'm sure, yes, like technically, like this institution is bigger than me. And he said, "And can you also potentially acknowledge that you don't know everything?" I was like, "Well, I know a lot." He's like, "You're in treatment, man." He's like, "Let me remind you, you're in treatment. So do you really think you know everything?" I was like, "No, my life is a dumpster fire." Like, no. So I opened up, and it was hard for me. I didn't have a concept of a higher power. I was really young. I didn't have the worst bottom in the room, but something inside my head said, "Man, this is your last shot." Like, my whole life I've been labeled as high potential, and I intentionally like did everything I could to ruin that. Like, I was the only guy in high school that got placed in like honors classes and proactively chose to like go down, because I just didn't want that pressure. I didn't care about academics. I didn't care about achievement. I didn't my athletics, people said I underachieved. Like, I was just like, I was awesome at underachieving. I just didn't want anyone to have an expectation of me. And then when life got really hard and I didn't know how to live it, and it was so painful, I was like, okay, I'm just terrible at life. I should just die. Like, I just given up, because I just watched people like kind of know stuff. And so as I went through this process and I started to work these steps, and I started to hear my story come out of other people's mouth, and then people that had gone through this program and gone and stayed clean and stayed sober, and they came back to share their story. I remember these old bikers, like, I thought they came in to freaking rob the joint. Like, they looked tough, you know what I mean? And like, I thought they're going to threaten us, and they're talking about how they were drug addicts, and they were sharing stories that were worse than mine, and then they were talking about how they opened themselves up to this process, and how this is what their life looks today. And I genuinely believe they were paid performers. But like, someone's like, "No, they're real." And I don't know why. Maybe it was the guy that I chose to be my mentor, the guy that told me I didn't have a real drug problem, like, told me they're real. But like, I just, at some point, something happened where I said, before I leave this life, if there's a chance that this is the instruction manual to life that I've never got being raised by my parents and challenges in childhood, all that kind of stuff. If this is the one chance for me to find the way to do this thing called life, I should at least give that a shot before I check out. And I did, and that change happened in treatment. And part of that change was they sent me to another treatment center afterwards, and I was willing to do another 6 months worth of work because I was like, okay, I'll just do this last thing and then I'll be done. And then I left that treatment center and I found a 12-step fellowship. It's not the only way, and I'm not here representing it. That's against our traditions and concepts, but it saved my life. I got a sponsor and I started going to meetings, and my life completely and utterly transformed and changed well before all the professional awesome stuff I've been able to do, like just the inside, like getting pulled over by a police officer with 1 year clean, shaking because my body's telling me I'm going to jail because it's so used to that moment, and my brain going, wait a second, I'm on my way to a meeting and I have a job and I have an apartment and I haven't done anything illegal in the last year. The worst I'm going to, well, except for the ticket, the speeding,
Yeah.
but technically that's illegal, but nothing that's going to put me in jail.
Not so bad.
You're just going to get a ticket and you have the money to pay it. And I was like, wow. And I just started crying. Like, police officer was very confused, but yeah. So and I never relapsed. Just really fortunate.
Yeah. Wait, you shouldn't be crying. Like, why are you crying?
Yeah. He's like, dude, you're only going 10 miles per hour of the speed. I'm like, you don't understand. And then I told him that I was in recovery.
Tell me they let you off.
Well, I told him I was in recovery on my way to a meeting, and then I'm like, oh crap, now he's definitely going to search my car.
Yeah.
Because I just told him I'm a drug addict. But he actually said that's awesome. So yeah.
Oh man, reminds me of time. Actually, I got 2 tickets within 10 minutes at one point.
Oh wow,
that was bad.
You like
that was a bad day. So, but I didn't have anything illegal in the car. So, yeah, 2 different cops, 2 different like cities as well. Like, so it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you're going that fast, I guess you can do it from one city to the other. Yeah.
Apparently. I was only going about this fast, and I look up and there's another police officer radar, and I'm like, ugh.
You're lucky you didn't go to jail.
Yeah, right. 2 in 10 minutes for sure. So I wasn't going that fast, but like, anyway, they thought I was going 15, 18 miles over or something like that. But that was a while ago. So, yeah. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to let you off this time. I'm like, oh, thank you, officer. He's like, I'm just going to write you a ticket and not make you go to court. I'm like, oh, so, because back then your second ticket, you'd go to court, so that was Ohio. But anyway, so tell me about, okay, cops aside, right? So then what happened? Because I mean, how did you get the internal mechanism, I guess, once you're through that point and you're like, hey, I'm going to give life this best shot? Is that part of the motivation that made you like become the success that you were? Because I want people to understand what happened there, because I mean, you're a Fortune 500 company, right? So
Inc. 500.
Inc. 500. Okay. Well,
I mean, I would take
amazing.
That,
So tell me how you get from second 6 months of rehab, and then what principles did you put into action? And then I know you're teaching those now, but I would love for people to like look under the hood a little bit, like, and see like what made you get there? How'd you get there? And because there's a lot of people that are stuck, and maybe they're on, a couple of the steps, but they haven't figured out how to get to there. Right. So how do you do that?
Well, so first of all, I had to learn my recovery process and my program, like, to stop doing drugs. But basically what it is, it's a self-leadership process for how you do life. And I found myself, now that I wasn't, high all the time, actually gainfully employed. And so a lot of my life was at work. And also I'm single. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. All my friends and family and all that stuff are somewhere else. And so I'm like, okay, I'll chase a career. I never thought I could be a productive member of society. And so, I'll give you an example. I had to apply my recovery to my work. And this is when I realized that what I had been taught in recovery was a game-changing self-leadership process that everybody, that now I've committed my life to helping other people that aren't even in addiction or recovery be able to use. And I I was working at Dell corporate in the call center, and my job, my most important responsibility was to take 30 calls a day, talking to customers. And they would metric you on that. Like, you got to do 30 calls and sell computers. And I know this is true for most professionals out there. The one thing that felt like it was really hard for me to do was my job at work. Because I was constantly like in meetings that like either I was too scared to say no to, or I didn't need to be in, or I was like nosing and I wanted to know what was going on or whatever. I'd be doing tasks that like my teammates should be doing, or I should be delegating. I'd be agreeing to things with clients that I shouldn't, that would then create all this massive rework, engage in like, office drama and gossip and all that kind of stuff. And so I wasn't able to get my 30 calls in, and I was really struggling at work. And I actually went to my old addict behavior, because it was like about a year in, and I started blaming everybody else. Like, I started saying, you know what, my boss sucks. And then I was like, you know what, they gave me 3 weeks of training, but I don't think that training was good. The training sucks. And then I'm like, my team sucks. And then, everybody in the company, those teams suck. And then pretty soon, before you know, it's like Michael Dell sucks. He's the reason that I'm not good at my job, right? Like, there's 88,000 employees, but like he did all this to screw me. And just classic point the finger at other people stuff. So I'm going home and I call my sponsor, and the way that I've translated what I learned in 12-step recovery for self-leadership is the first thing is you have to practice rigorous authenticity. And practicing rigorous authenticity is a thing that most people aren't willing to do. It's taking a cold, hard look at yourself and just truly 100% owning everywhere where you're not fully leading yourself, where you're not doing your best. Like, it's so hard for people to just own their side of the street 100%. They want to blame. And so I wanted to blame. And he's like, well, let's practice rigorous authenticity here. He didn't use those words, but that's my translation. And he said, when you got clean, one of the things I had you do was a searching and fearless inventory. That's one of the steps. And it's like, the word authenticity is like, pretty popular out there, but let me tell you what rigorous authenticity looks like. Here's authenticity. Hey, Michael, did you hurt people in active addiction? The answer is yes, I did. Here's rigorous authenticity, what my sponsor did. Michael, write down every single person that you hurt and how you hurt them, and now you're going to go make amends to them. That's rigorous, right? Like, that's owning your side of the street. And so he did the same thing for me from a work perspective. He's like, so you say you have no time to do your job. Where are you spending your time? And he did an inventory of where I was spending my time at work. And I was spending it in low value tasks, meetings, tolerating poor performance, avoiding difficult conversations, setting unrealistic expectations, like all this kind of stuff that we teach at Addictive Leadership, for people to solve. And it was like 20 hours a week. And he's like,
right? You save 20 hours a week by.
Well, that's how much I was wasting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could be doing 50 calls a day. Right. Yeah, and at the time of this conversation with him, I'm rep number 400 out of 500. Like, I'm not good. You know what I mean? I'm bottom 20%, bottom quartile or whatever. And so he's like, okay, so why are you doing those things if you know they're a waste of time? And that's why the second principle is so important. It's not just about knowing where we aren't leading ourselves. That's practicing rigorous authenticity. A lot of people aren't able to truly do that. But then, even if we know, there's a big difference between intellectually knowing something and doing something, right? Like, everybody that's potentially listening knows what it's like to say, I'm going to eat healthy. And then it's really hard to go do it. Or I'm going to have a difficult conversation with a loved one, and then it's hard to go do it, or whatever it is. Or I'm going to quit this job, or I'm going to ask for a promotion, or whatever. So the second principle is surrender the outcome. It's now that you intellectually know where you aren't leading yourself, let's get to the fear that's stopping you from taking the actions that you need to take. And what surrender the outcome means is, when human beings experience fear, it's almost always fear of not getting something that we want, losing something that we have, or something bad happening to us. It's an outcome of something that's going to happen. And for me, like, for example, in recovery process, you have to make amends to people. And I was really scared to make amends to people, because in my head, and there was like 6 months where I wasn't making amends. My sponsor called me on it. He taught me how to surrender the outcome. And what he taught me was there's two types of fear. There's the fear that you know, and then there's the deeper fear that you don't know. And the fear that I knew was I'm scared to have these conversations and tell people I stole from them and all that kind of stuff. But what he helped me get to was deep down, I had this whole dominoes happen in my head, which I bet a lot of people listening can relate to, even if they're not an addict in recovery. Just generalize it to the domino effect. My brain went, I'm going to go have a difficult conversation. They're going to hate me. I'm going to go back to my old coping mechanism because I'm going to be so flustered that I'm going to get high again. I'm going to get high again. I'm going to go ripping and running, find a connect in Nashville. And then all of a sudden I'm going to be homeless again. And then I'm going to die. And it literally goes from an action that I should take to save my life. Mm-hmm. My brain's telling me how it's going to kill me. Yeah. It's illogical, but emotionally, that's the fear. And that helped us back when it was like us in a cave and there was a lion, like whatever. But like, it's not helpful when you're in the Dell call center and you're doing all these things that waste your time. So my sponsor helped me get to the deep, because, I was scared. I was scared to delegate tasks. I didn't want people to think I was better. I was scared to tell a client that we can't get them what they want in time. I was scared to decline meetings where I wasn't needed, right? Like all those things. I was scared. And he said, so what are you scared of? And I'm like, well, I'm scared that if I miss the meeting, I'll miss out on something important. If I say no to the client, we'll lose them. And he's like, no, but let's get to the deeper fear. And in all of those fears, they all came back to the same, at Addictive Leadership, we call it the death or doom script. They came to the same deeper fear, which was my brain said, if I do one of these things wrong, I'm going to end up on a PIP. And then it said, if I'm on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, I'm not going to work out of it. I'm going to get fired because you know what? I don't belong here. Most of the people around me have a college degree and I don't. Most of the people are from the South and I'm not, and I stick out. Most of them have experience in this industry. I don't. And then you layer on top of that, I'm younger than most of them. And then above all that, people are asking me, why did I move to Nashville, Tennessee? And I'm scared to tell them that it's because I'm a drug addict. I need to get away from my playgrounds, playmates, and play things. Like that's what they tell you to do. And so I'm carrying around this stigma. And so my brain's got this huge case for how you'll never get a job like this again. Right. And then if I get fired, I'm not gonna be able to pay my rent. And if I can't pay my rent, I'm going to get kicked out. If I get kicked out, I'm going to be on the street. If I'm on the street, I'm going to get high again. If I get high again, I'm going to get high again and again, and then I'm going to die. Same thing. So surrendering the outcome isn't like, hey, what's your fear? Just get over that. How do we get to the deeper outcome and begin a process and a practice of overcoming that fear so we go from what we intellectually know to what we can actually truly work through? And then the beautiful thing is that when you get really honest about the things that are holding you back, and then you learn how to surrender the fear I became addicted to surrendering fear. Like that's what recovery kind of almost teaches you. Then what happens is the result of that is the thing that I'm obsessed with. People talk about hard work. That's physical. People talk about smart work. That's intellectual. But we got a lot of hardworking, smart people out there that know they need to have a difficult conversation with someone and they're not having it. Right? And they're not realizing their potential because there's this whole other type of work called uncomfortable work. And it's emotional. And most of us didn't get taught that when we were growing up or early in our careers. And it's when we almost irrationally avoid the things that would help us lead ourselves and be more successful because it literally is physically uncomfortable because of a feeling or a fear or an emotion. But when you get honest about the problem, you learn how to surrender the fear, then you can do uncomfortable work. And so sure enough, my sponsor takes me through this process. And all of a sudden, I go from being addicted to hiding to addicted to leading, right? And I start saying no to meetings that I don't need to be in. I start delegating the tasks that I need to. I start setting the right expectations, all the things they trained me on how to do. I had all the intellectual knowledge there anyhow. I just needed a process to lead myself so I could do 100% of my uncomfortable work. Everybody does some, but like whenever I speak to groups or whatever, I'm like, is anyone here having more than 50% of the difficult conversations they're supposed to? And like one person will raise their hand and we all know they're an a-hole that's like lying, right? Like, or they're a sociopath, one of the two. But everybody else is like, no. And so he helped me identify that. And I started doing that uncomfortable work at work. And within 2 months of this conversation, I went from rep number 400 to rep number 1. Nice. Like 2 months.
Yeah.
And then I just took that self-leadership process and they promoted me to manager, and I started teaching that to my people, and I took the worst teams to the best teams over and over and over 8 years. I just kept essentially sponsoring the people that reported to me, translating the process that had saved my life into a self-leadership process that would make them do their uncomfortable work. And that became the foundation for my success.
I love that. Well, and as a leader, as an aspiring leader, it's the uncomfortable things that actually set you apart, right? And it's those are the things that like most of the people leave for the end of the day, but those are the things that you have to confront like immediately. I know it was early on in my life where like when I think it was in college, I think I'd heard of Tony Robbins or something like that, and it was something he has said like was to the same point of like if you're afraid of that, just go do it and do it now. Or maybe it was Brian Tracy. I don't know. Somebody's like, just you do it now, right? It's like if you're afraid, you'll just go do it. Like, and
Yeah.
then you don't sit back. You don't. It's not months later. It doesn't hang over your head. You go do it. And those uncomfortable conversations. I'll be honest. I have those problems still. Like, I mean, I want people to like me, right? Everybody does, but in reality, you don't realize like being honest about the circumstance and about what you're feeling, what they're doing, what you're doing, like all of that actually makes for a much better relationship. And I think, that's what you push people into because everybody's afraid of rejection. That's a huge fear. And I think that is one of the things why people don't want to have those emotional or direct conversations. They'll just do it themselves. There's, you know, love brain types and different things. And there's certain brain types that are much more susceptible to being taken advantage of by others because they don't want to let somebody down or do something. And so like, then there's other ones that understand that and they take advantage of that. And there's this
Yep.
like weird balance, but both are out of balance, because you can't just keep delegating either. You have to like actually do the hard work yourself as well. So
Yep.
yeah, I love that
Can I
point.
say one more thing about the uncomfortable work part as you were talking? So I'm a motivational speaker. I get to go speak at all these conferences or whatever. And I'll be the first person, and anyone that knows me will tell you, I hate motivational speakers. So I basically hate myself. Um, and so, because you mentioned, a couple people that I'm not saying
Yeah.
actually hate them
Yeah.
or they suck,
Right.
but right now we're having a conversation about uncomfortable work. And we're like, oh, people should do it. And then if they
Yeah.
do it, and here's my obsession. It's not actually doing uncomfortable work. It's becoming addicted to it. And
Yeah.
here's why. And here's why. In business and almost most leadership responsibilities, numbers tell you whether or not you're successful or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting when you start to take numbers to the concept of uncomfortable work, because most people, you put them in a corner, you give them enough pain, and then you give them a TikTok with Tony Robbins saying, just do it. They're going to go do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they were in enough pain.
Right.
Just like I, as an addict, if things got bad enough, I could go a day or two without using, and then I go right back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So my obsession is not go do uncomfortable work. It's how do you make your life about doing all of the uncomfortable work? How do you do it addictively, or translation in business systematically? Anything that a business wants to become addicted to, they create systems for, right? They want it to happen over and over and over again. So for example, when I'm talking to, like a CEO or whatever, I'll be like, what percentage of your employees are allowed to show up to work naked?
Right.
And, I've gotten something other than, what I expected in that answer a few
Maybe they
times.
expect that.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't expect 100% of people to wear clothes? Like, we're a very progressive workplace. Okay. All right, cool. Different business model.
Yeah.
What percentage of your employees are allowed to show up to work high and punch each other in the face? And I'm not speaking to the UFC or whatever. I'm not saying those people are high, but I'm just saying. What percentage of what percentage of the time are your employees allowed to steal from you? And so when you put things into numbers, you start to understand what your level of commitment is. Is it don't steal? Because I got a lot of moments where I didn't steal in active addiction. I also had a lot of moments where I did. Pretty sure I was a guy that was a stealer. You know what I mean? It just takes a couple. It just takes one time, really, like depending on who it is. So The reason I'm obsessed with this is when we talk about things like, saying no to distractions, having difficult conversations, having accountability conversations, doing uncomfortable work as leaders, every leader is very quick to point out the uncomfortable work that they do. But there's a big difference between having the knowledge of what you're supposed to do, executing it sometimes, and the frequency by which you do it. And most leaders are doing about 50% of their uncomfortable work. And then they're wondering why they need to hire more people, invest in more technology, and like do all these extra things while they're working so hard at night. And they will love to look outside at all of the distractions. Oh, AI is doing this, the government's doing that, this team's doing that, just like I did at Dell. Instead of looking at themselves and saying, am I doing 100% of my uncomfortable work? And the reason I'm so obsessed with that is if I just use once, my 23 years clean as of, not as of today, but like I'm at 23 years right now, it goes away. And so my standard for working my recovery, I mean, it didn't have to be like 100% every single day, but it is consistent and always, if I want to always stay clean, right? Like I have a commitment to a much higher benchmark. And before someone goes, yeah, but you're a drug, dude, I'm a drug addict. I'm born to do drugs. My natural state is to have drugs in my system. I was just talking with someone else in recovery the other day. Like if I could right now and there was no consequences, I would get high right now. My brain still wants it on some level. Like, well, it doesn't have the desire, but it'll crave it. So if we can have if literally in every country and every language, there is or almost every country, almost every language, there's a 12-step program, and there's other programs too, helping drug addicts that use drugs every single day, or alcoholics or sex addicts or video game addicts that do these destructive behaviors every day with no choice. It's a disease. And they're able to become productive members of society, arrest that addiction and stop that behavior. And this works in every country, in every language, like for millions of people for the last 100 years. If there is a process that can do that, are we potentially holding ourselves to a too low of a standard when it comes to leaders having difficult conversations? I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to diminish how hard that conversation is, but it is harder because I'm the miracle, right? So for every 100 of me that tries to get to 10 years clean or sober, one will. The other 99, and I'm talking about the people that try, not the people that don't try, the people that want it, the people that have incentive already. And so changing how we look at uncomfortable work has to start with changing our standards. It's not just, did you do it? That's qualitative and subjective. It's what's the frequency by which you do it, right? Like I have a practice where once a month I identify a specific piece of uncomfortable work and I work our little process on it. And at the end of the month, someone on my team holds me accountable. Did I do it or not? Right? And that's what we teach companies to do. It's like you make it quantitative, measurable, accountable, but you have to have that practice and that diligence. And so it's like, how do we go from 50 to 100%? And what could happen to our teams if we did that? It's just, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
well, I mean, I think
crazy on
the
that.
motivation that I think anybody can take away is if you're pushing into uncomfortable all the time, not doing it intentionally to make everything uncomfortable, but like the uncomfortable circumstances, the things that you have to do, the tasks that you don't want to do. If you do them and like you do them right away and get them out of the way, it's like, how much more productive would you be than your family, than your business, than your community, than your nation? I mean, it starts to go pretty significant. And it's actually an example I've used before where, you talk about healthy cells turn to healthy tissues, healthy organ systems, healthy body, healthy community, or healthy family, healthy community. It's the same type of principle that works no matter if it's in your body, from nutritional type of thing, or if it's in the soil, like with the microbes of the soil and how that works and how that starts to move. But doing the uncomfortable is huge because it really motivates anybody. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're at this place in your career or at that place in your career. If you're doing the uncomfortable and doing more than what you're expected to do, you're going to continue to go up whatever ladder you want to be on, or make your own ladder, make your own house and ladder, I mean,
that's what I did.
right.
Yeah.
So, it's, I mean, I'm not a great employee. I know that, but it's it's like some people don't want to do like what you do, right? And that's okay. It's totally fine. But if you're doing more than what you're doing today, because for a long period of time, and you're 100% right, society has allowed just I don't know, just like mediocrity to run, and allow it to happen. The whole test of you know, the monkeys that were grabbing the bananas and they get pulled down and different stuff like that. It's like, that's not the way it should be. Like, we should all be lifting each other up. And that's the intent of obviously this podcast and everything we try to do in life. And so I think but that's uncomfortable, right? Because
Yeah.
you're wanting to do more, right? So
The what you just said about the monkeys, I was doing a speaking engagement, kind of an experiential workshop for a leadership team a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that I did was I took these like 5 leadership competencies that we teach, and I got people up and just said like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at this? And had them physically place themselves. And so one of the leadership competencies is accountability conversations, having accountability conversations. And one guy was all the way at the 10, and a bunch of people were clustered in the middle, which has always happened. And some people are actually practicing rigorous authenticity and being honest that they avoid a lot of them, and they're like at the 1, 2, or 3.
yeah,
And so I asked the guy that was at the 10, I was like, hey, like, tell me more about that. And it turned out like he's just really, good at having the difficult conversations or whatever. But someone on the team was making fun of him for being over there. He was like, come over here with us, and like, oh, come on, man. Like, you're just so good at it or whatever. And I swear, I felt like I was on a playground at recess
mm-hmm.
where like peer pressure for the social norm, like to what you said. And I actually just stopped the whole thing. I was like, look, I'm not trying to call you out, but look at what you're doing right now. You're literally making fun of the person that's doing the thing that we all wish we could do, because they'd already agreed that they wish they could have all the difficult conversations. They were like, our firm would double in their professional services organization. Our firm would double in size if everybody had all the accountability conversations. They literally said all that. And then one guy's at the 10 and this dude's making a joke and everybody's laughing at it. And I'm like, we literally just made fun of the person that's doing the thing that you all said that you wish you could do. And so just notice how you can say everything you want because the speaker's here and all that kind of stuff, and we're at a leadership retreat, but understand what the subliminal social contract is. And that is, we don't actually do that. And so you guys are going to walk out of here and you're going to be like, yeah, everybody in our firm needs to have difficult conversations. And you know what the first thing you're going to do is go try to get your direct reports to do it instead of doing it yourself. You'd be like, I'm going to start holding everybody accountable to having difficult conversations instead of actually doing them yourself. I was like, we are the leaders of this organization right here. And right now, this just exposed a serious issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I did it in a way where I wasn't like embarrassing the guy that did it. I was like, this is totally normal what just happened here. But just let's look at that. Let's learn from that. And we can redefine our social contract right here. And they happen to have a partner. It's a public accounting firm. They have a partner meeting every month, and so they're going to hold space on their agenda. I taught them where someone has to speak the quiet truth about accountability, and they're just going to hold the time and not be like, okay, does anybody have anything? No, good. It's literally going to be 5 minutes of silence, or they're going to do it or not. I mean, but like they're going to hold themselves accountable to holding that 5 minutes, so they can start to redefine that social contract. Because it's crazy. Like we are pulling each other down because we all say we want everybody to say the truth, but we all can't handle. It's like I feel like Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men right now, but we all can't handle the truth, right? Like we don't actually want that. We say it.
Yeah.
It's almost like we have a social contract that says that we're all going to agree that we want it, and we say it. Yeah. But we also have a social contract that says we all agree that we're not going to actually do the uncomfortable work that it takes to get it, because that requires, interestingly enough, leadership, because leadership is a willingness to take an unpopular stance.
Right. Well, and that 10, right? I mean, they're sitting there going, okay, now do I compromise and come back over here? Do I go start my own company? Do I or do we fire that person that's making fun? But the person that's making fun could be like multiple things. One, they are afraid to make themselves accountable to a higher level. right? That's possible,
100%. Yep.
right? And so they're making fun of people at a higher level so that they don't have to actually step up, right? And then you have the other potential where actually maybe they're down here and they are really under aptitudes. They have to tear somebody else down to feel better about themselves for some reason. And it's like, but there's definitely some toxicity. And if that doesn't get fixed, that team is not going to work very well for very long. Something will change,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So what are some other steps that companies can do, from a standpoint of like, first of all, I want them to go to your website and check out some things. But what are like top three things you think that like right now somebody can do like an honest check on what we talked about today, on themselves first, on their family relationships, I think is another big one, right? In relationships in general, because sometimes as you continue to be successful and have those authentic relationships, all of a sudden, or conversations, all of a sudden you realize you don't have authentic relationships. And so now all of a
Yep.
sudden those friends that were your friends are the ones that are making fun of you, and you're becoming subdued in what you can actually accomplish. And unfortunately, you sometimes have to leave those friends behind and then come back. I mean,
Yeah.
but just tell me three things that you think like today people can really take action on, and maybe a good step on how to move forward.
Well, okay. So my priority when I answer a question like this is because, in the content world, it's like, what are three things that you can do right now
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff.
we could do
I
20 if you
want,
want. I was just
I,
thinking about the time.
yeah, no. I know. No, I'm not making fun. But
Yeah,
I try to be really thoughtful on an answer like this because what I care about are sustainable things, things
that's
that
right.
actually change behavior, not something that you do interesting exercise and then you go back to what you're doing. So the first thing is, if you are listening and you're aware of uncomfortable work that you're avoiding as you've listened to this right now, don't go to TikTok to get motivated to do it. Write down on a piece of paper what it is, because something powerful happens when you write something down. And then try to get to the fear. Like, get to the fear and ask yourself what you're scared of, and then just keep asking why and be willing to go down until you find something much deeper that has almost nothing to do with the situation. That's when you know that you've gotten there. And this is something that it can be easier done sometimes with someone who knows you really well. You just literally say, here's the thing I'm struggling in doing. My job is to get to the fear. Can you ask me why? And there's something magical happens when that other person does that. And then when you're done with that, another thing that you can do just in this little mini exercise I'm prescribing is write down on a piece of paper all things that you can't control if you take the action. And then on the next, like that's going down the left column, and on the right column on the piece of paper, write down all things you can control to optimize that action. For example, if I have to have a difficult conversation with an employee, let's say, I can't control how they'll take it. I can't control if they're not performing. I can't control if I communicate it well. I can't control the setting. I can't control whether I preface, like that kind of stuff. And that could help. And then make a smart commitment to doing it, make it time bound, the acronym SMART. And so like, that's one thing you could do right now. Another thing is I can't remember if it's on my website or the company's website, addictiveleadership.com. But there's an assessment that we have where you can literally identify where we've tried to help people identify all the uncomfortable work that they're avoiding. And so you can go take that assessment. And by the way, it doesn't like drop you into like some big funnel or something like that. Like, we're actually really terrible at all that stuff right now.
We all
Which
want
is,
more emails. We all want more texts. We all,
yeah. I think you get an email with your report. And then I think that's it. And maybe you go onto the newsletter or something like that you can easily unsubscribe from. But it's not like some big, huge lead magnet that's like, vaporware. I wanted something real so you could identify what's going on. And then the other thing is like, I'm not trying to promote here, but like if you want to read my book, I've got So the process that I just described is actually like step by step laid out in the book. You can go to michaelbrody-waite.com or greatleaderbook.com and the book's there. But I don't get any profit from the book. Like I just reinvest that profit in our mission, and I don't sell. I mean, I sell books, but I don't sell like a ton. So like that's not a big thing for me. But the reason that I wrote it is different. Um, when I got clean, they handed me a 12-step book, and that piece of literature changed my life. And so there were a couple dudes that were like getting sober and teaching each other to do it. And they built this like kind of cool little community. But when they committed their process to literature, it went worldwide and it changed the world. So like that was reason number one. And then reason number two is I think a lot of my, the stuff that I like to focus on that I think drives self-leadership is very akin to like, let's say a Brene Brown, who I was really into for a period of time. But Brene Brown is like, an academic and a philosopher. And so it'd always be like these really high concepts of like, be authentic at work. And then I'd be like, yeah. And then like, I go into like a really hard conversation and be like, but what do I do when that person's being an a-hole and threatening me? Like, it wasn't that simple. And so I wrote my book to be a step-by-step implementation because I just had a lot of empathy for that last mile. And I even had my publisher say, don't put this level of granularity of how to execute this in the book because then people won't call you. I was like, that's the whole reason I wanted to write the book, because with a book that I got in 12-step was an aspirational, like, hey, try not to use drugs, but you really got to reach out to me to like be able to like do that. It was, here's how you freaking do it, man. And so that's another way, but also like, it'd be just interesting if you just asked like the people that you care about the uncomfortable work they're avoiding. Just cultivating awareness around all that stuff. So I've given you some tools. I've given you some things that I've created for you. I've given you some things you can just go do. But if none of that resonates, you can also like, contact me through my website. And believe it or not, I read every single one, and I'll probably reply.
I love it. Yeah, and conversation points like what you just said are part of just starting the conversation a lot of times, and framing it the right way, I think, is important so that it's not like adversarial. Getting there before there's a crisis is also important. When there's a
Yeah.
crisis, it gets heated, most of the time. But it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so we've got our stuff. I'll definitely be getting the book, and I don't know, maybe we can figure out how to get some to our following, as if they say something or whatever else. We'll see.
I'm
I
good
don't,
with
I
whatever.
don't know what to say. We're not really giving any giveaways or things at this point, but maybe we should. So, but I really appreciate you taking the time today, and I know others will too. It really opened up, a good conversation.
Thank you.
And taking that to the next level is huge. And I'm a big proponent of writing things down, making those lists, and really self-evaluating, because you and you can lie to yourself very well. But you can also say, you know what, I'm done with that. Let's move on. Let's go, and let's take this life for everything it's got, because we don't know how long we have. That's another reason why I'm doing this podcast. I mean, I shouldn't be here. I should have died 7 years ago. And it's like, those are things that, like, we don't know. And I know someone will be impacted by this, so thank you for that. And I know
Yeah.
our listeners are going to hear this and know that there's people they should share this with. So please do it. As we know, the algorithm doesn't always help us out there. So like, you got to share this around, and it's the grassroots side of things of getting this into the hands of people that need the help, right? And having those conversations, those good, authentic conversations. So thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you in Nashville again. And otherwise come visit, depending on which place I am. but would love to see you sometime soon. And again, thanks so much. And until next time, Regenerative Inspiration, we'll have another episode. We have another great leader coming, and we hope you can inspire somebody, inspire yourself as well, encourage someone, do something out of the ordinary, definitely make authentic conversations happen, and take some action. So that's what we want. So until next time, see you then.